Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon. Sorry, or my apologies for not being consistent for the last few days. I couldn't conduct these lectures. I was outside town and a bit busy. I had promised that I was going to manage to doing that, but I think it was practically impossible. Today's topic is on IAS 38, a standard that does focus on intangibles. We have different types of intangibles, such as goodwill, brands, licenses, softwares, name them. When we look at intangibles, against versus tangibles, there's some physical presence. These are things that you can touch. Intangibles, these are things that you can feel. Tangibles could be things like cash. You're able to touch, you're able to see it. Furniture, property, plant and equipment, stock or inventory. But in intangibles, I believe that they are things that you cannot touch, but they have value. So how do we recognize intangibles? Or what is the criterion that we can actually use? Obviously, first we need to look at identifiability. Are we able to separately identify an intangible that you can say, this is an intangible? Can we control it? Do we have control? Can we restrict others from the probable future economic benefits that will flow through the use of that asset? If yes, then we are in control. Then issues of recognition. Hello. Okay, so these are the examples of intangibles. I already explained on this. Your brand names, licenses, patents, name them. I did actually explain on the 3 factors to consider, which is identifiability. Are we able to identify them? Are we able to separate them? Are we able to sell them separately? So we can go in details to just explain what these terms or definitions and the interpretation they are in. First, the separate acquisition. Capitalized at cost plus indirectly attributable costs, e.g. legal fees, testing costs. So what can be capitalized as an intangible asset? Once we recognize it as an intangible asset, we'll have to amortize it over the period of time. So that amortization is what you would call, if you're actually removing value from an asset, from a fixed asset. That is what we call as depreciation. Research. Apparently, research cannot be capitalized. You can only expense it because it's like shooting in the dark. There is no target whatsoever. You are not held accountable if the research does not go as per plan. Therefore, it's a matter of probability. And it's prudent that it has to be expensed. Meaning that you have to charge it in the P&L or the profit and loss in that particular year that it has been incurred. Remember that the P&L works on one basic concept, which is the matching concept or accruals concept, which states that revenue earned must be matched against expenses incurred in earning them. But if it is development, all development costs, because at that time you are sure the outcome, at least the outcome, the expected outcome. Therefore, development costs will have to be capitalized. But there should be a criteria that must be met. One of them is that you should be able to use it or sell it separately. It's commercially viable, meaning there are all these justifications that you still derive value from this particular activity once it is done. No project. Technically feasible is not something that is out of this world, where you say you're actually going to build a car. This car, it's going to be flying, going to heaven. You be going there, maybe spend about 5 days, 7 days, 8 days to go and see the angels and come back. That is not feasible, at least for now. Maybe until Musk or Elon Musk, he comes up with something that is crazy, but it's gonna maybe work. We don't know, but until now, it's not possible. That is not technically feasible. Resources, you need to have a budget. Because a budget in this case is basically an assurance that you are going to complete that particular project. So there should be resources available. And you should be able to measure the cost reliably, because how else can you recognize something that you cannot measure reliably? There should be probable future economic benefits. And the term probable, it's nicely crafted. Because it's possible that you can have this particular asset or an intangible whatever, which is not able to generate any meaningful benefits. But you're using probable because that is what is driving you to justify the acquisition of that. In short, internally generated brands and assets, whatever, they should not be capitalized. Just expense them. Just expense them. Here, just going into details of what identifiability means. We had already explained that it should be an item that you can separately identify. It should be distinguished from goodwill, because goodwill will sit under IFRS 3, which is business combinations. So an asset that meets identifiability criterion must, one, be capable of being separated from the entity and sold, transferred, licensed, or rented either individually or in combination with a related contract, asset, or liability, or arises from contractual obligation or other legal rights, regardless of whether those rights are transferable or separable from the entity or other rights or obligations. Control is very difficult. But here, there are things that we have to look at, guys. Are you are you a sole beneficiary of economic benefits? And are you assured that it shall remain so to enjoy the probable future economic benefits that will arise from the use of that asset? Are you in a position to restrict access so that others, they do not enjoy the economic benefits that arises from the use of that asset? If so, then obviously you're almost there. That's your asset. You can recognize it. Though there are certain things that might be very difficult to be scoped under control. For example, a very skilled employee. The skills that that employee may possess, you cannot say that we will be there or have exclusive rights for these skills. That employee can use them somewhere else, elsewhere, by even just resigning from your current or from your organization. Even if you bring in all these legal things to restrict it, but it's very difficult to have control over certain assets, like this skilled stuff that we are talking about. And here, when we talk about control, it's not just about something that can be enforceable in the courts of law. Something like, for example, land. You have traditional land. You don't have titles. But this is a family land. Through your various traditional leadership hierarchy, if that can be forced, that is yours. So control truly needs to be looked at carefully. For example, an entity may be able to identify skills in its workforce and to measure the cost of providing those skills to its staff via training. However, the entity usually does not have control over the expected economic benefits arising from the skilled staff, as they can leave their employment, even if the skills are protected in some way, such that departing staff are not permitted to use them elsewhere. The entity has lost the future benefits of the skills of that particular person who is leaving the company, whom you have said you are not going to use these skills elsewhere. You would have already lost that. Similarly, the purchase of customer leads or expenditure on advertising. Though companies, they normally argue heavily on why advertising must be included as part of an intangible. Because they spend so much money, say bringing these Hollywood stars, movies, celebrities in these countries, musicians, name them, to advertise, to be part of the brand ambassadors for that particular product. So they would argue that it can take the benefits flowing because of these activities we are doing will take for 3-4 years. Therefore, we have to start amortizing because the benefits will come in. That's a very difficult thing. And the auditors, what they will do is they'll say, no, but this is what the standard says, without coming up with a justification why it shouldn't be included. So future economic benefits may include revenue from the sale of products, services, or processes, but also includes cost savings or other benefits from use of an asset. Use of intellectual property can reduce operating costs rather than produce revenue. So recognition and measurement of intangible assets. So an asset may be recognized as an intangible asset when it meets the definition of an intangible asset and meets these recognition criteria. One, it is probable that the expected future economic benefits that are attributable to the asset will flow to the entity, and the cost of the asset can be measured reliably. And initially, the intangible assets, guys, will be measured at cost. So the cost of separately acquired intangible assets comprises, because for the internally, you don't even capitalize, you don't. Purchase price, including any import duties and non-refundable purchase taxes, less discounts and rebates, and directly attributable costs of preparing the asset for use. These could actually include employee benefits, professional fees. Under professional fees, it could be transaction advisory, mandatory lead arrangers. All those costs will have to be capitalized, and the cost of testing as well. So the costs that cannot be included, I had already mentioned advertising. You can't include advertising. Administration costs, you are not going to include them. Initial operating losses incurred from operation, those cannot be capitalized. You cannot do that. And then we'll look at the facts, the industry example, guys. And these are things that we see. These are arguments that we hear in the corridors of the corporate world. So in the corporate world, it is often noticed that entities spend huge sums of money on advertising campaigns to launch new products. Some multinational entities, even local entities that we have seen around, even hire famous performing artists. The new thing is also about the Facebook celebrities. These are guys that are blogging every day, finding something to write, finding something to talk about and all that. YouTubers or movie stars to act as brand ambassadors of the new products. We have seen recently, even in this country, we have seen people advertising water. These are just people who just sit, who are highly tempted by their camera phones. They start saying anything, everything, and get the attention of companies, and companies start using them as brand ambassadors. And obviously, because of their large following, it is expected that there will be future economic benefits flowing to the company. And they start arguing now, the organizers start arguing that this cost, advertising costs, must be capitalized, must be regarded as intangible assets. Because the amount spent on these advertising campaigns are so huge, these entities sincerely believe that the benefits from this promotion would last longer than a year, and thus they are inclined to defer the cost of introducing new products over a period of 2 to 3 years. When the financial statements of these entities have to be audited, this is usually a contentious issue. I had already explained on this, guys. Auditors, without any justification whatsoever, find it very difficult to convince the entity's management that the standard categorically disallows very such costs. So the rule of thumb, if payment for an intangible asset is deferred beyond the normal credit terms, then the cost is the cash price. So you only look at the cash price, and that is what you're going to regard as the cost. And the balance is treated as a finance charge over the period of the finance. So it goes and sits in the income statement. So if the question comes where they will show the total cost of an intangible asset is this, but this is what was paid, regard that cash as the only cost for the intangible, qua mana, finito. If intangible assets are acquired as part of a business combination, remember, business combination is actually looking at the IFRS 3. This is where it is connected with now, is it IFRS 10, which was IAS 27 on subsidiaries. Their cost is their fair value at the acquisition date. So the probability of future economic benefit is reflected in the fair value, and therefore the probability of future economic benefit required for recognition is presumed. In a business combination, such intangible assets are to be recognized separately from goodwill. So let's look at this example and just go through it. It says Havazoka is involved in developing new products and has spent 15 million kwacha on acquiring a patent to aid in this development. That patent, guys, it should be capitalized and regarded as an intangible asset. The initial investigative phase of the project cost, then obviously you have to start amortizing it over a period of time. The initial investigative phase of the project cost an additional 6 million kwacha, just expense it, whereby it was determined that the future feasibility of the product was guaranteed. Just expense it. Subsequent expenditure incurred on the product was 8 million, of which 5 million was spent on the functioning prototype. Functioning prototype. That's a right there. Functioning prototype. And the remainder on getting the product into a safe and sellable condition. Capitalize the whole 8 million. It's an intangible. A further 1 million was spent on marketing and 0.5 million training sales staff on how to demonstrate the use of the product. You will know the answer. You know the arguments that the management have been having, company managements have been having with the auditors on advertising, administration costs, and whatever and whatnot. Just expense it. Explain how Havazoka should account for the expenditure. We have already looked at it, guys. This is how it's going to be. We have already looked at it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. You expect more videos now that I'm home, safely home. Less distractions, so you expect more videos. Thank you so much. I think the next standard we'll be looking at IAS 16 and see how best we can get what is supposed to be gotten from IAS 16 and how maybe we can actually implement it. Thank you so much and bye-bye.